1970, we sure we did the forefront. Knowledge for selfish, for sure we did the work. Auditorium to basement of all faculty of law. We did represent, stand tall anywhere we go. Work hard and we shine, commitment, dedication. Neurosurgery, comedy, music, Nollywood. SOTK, Dr. Call, MC Casino. We did represent, stand tall anywhere we go. Great Uniben, great Uniben, great Uniben.
Welcome to another episode of the Uniben Alumni Series. As you know, this is a show where we celebrate men and women that have gone through the four walls of one of the greatest tertiary institutions in West Africa, the University of Benin. We have a legal practitioner and a policy expert with us today. He is a former special advisor and legislative aide at the Nigerian Senate. He is Olubunmi Ayantunji. Thank you very much, Olubunmi, for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for having me. It's so good to see you again.
Good to have you. Yeah. We'll start off with your interest in policy formulation. What influenced that interest? What can you say made you to decide to concentrate your expertise in policy formulation?
You know, it's nice that I'm speaking about this on this kind of podcast here. And also, I've been to Uniben, alma mater, to speak about why. Because policy as a field, it's not a field that lawyers, before I got into it, it's not a field that lawyers would definitely go in full time. It's more part-time, then comment on national issues and the rest of it. However, for me, I think Uniben being part of my story made it easy. While in Uniben, let me backtrack a little. While in Uniben, I was in law then. I was clerk of the Congress, I was speaker, I was SCG electoral committee member and all of that. So basically one day, right, we were in Professor FEU Osagede's office. Then I was pushing to, and I hope you have the time to, I want to tell this story. I was pushing to, I was pushing to, I had my friend then, his name is Osayuki, one guy. He wanted to be Attorney General.
Yeah.
I had another friend of mine, Unduche Emmanuel. He wanted to be SUG General Secretary. And law, as you know, would having all of those key positions in the student union politics, coming from a small faculty like law, a pass will call you and say, you already have Attorney General. That's it. Yeah. But then, I'll do night meetings. He was an excellent father, right? I would do night meetings. Would you understand this whole thing? And that was where I loved the inside tradings. Let me put it that way. I loved the idea of knowing firsthand and information before the larger body of students would know it. I love the idea of being part of a systemic change from the inside, and that was where my love for policy, politics, and the people arose. I've not put a name to it at that time, but I just love that we were able to succeed and get those things. And also we had the clerk, Alex then. So the success from my time serving in the Electoral Commission really made me think of this as a career, not politics, but the idea of effecting change from the inside. When I now finished school, I did my NYC, and I met one of my mentors, Aide Julo Poroko. He was a policy analyst in the ET then, and he mentored me to policy as it is. And I was favored and privileged to work with the distinguished Senator Tolu Odebi, who gave me a young Nigerian that he doesn't even know from anywhere that kind of trust and position to work as his essay on policy and research. And that was how I took flight from there.
Okay. Let's talk about your experience as SA and legislative aid on policy and research. How has that shaped your perspective on governance and policy making? Now, speaking from the inside.
One day I was watching after I'd done my term and I'd left Nigeria. I was watching a learned senior advocate of Nigeria say some things on live TV about legislative procedures, and I was amazed at how wrong he was. Serving in the Nigerian Senate and up close with my boss, who gave me a lot of leeway to work directly with him, made me understand that the legislative process in Nigeria is not the way we think about it. I understood that the simple process of passing a bill
Yeah,
is not the typical thing we were taught in school. First reading, second reading, third reading. It's not that easy.
yeah,
I dare say for the first time on this podcast that to pass a bill successfully in the Nigerian Senate, you need at least 5 million naira. As at 4 years ago,
oh, why is
that
it
is the least amount.
why is it that expensive?
Let me tell you one of the things that will take so much money.
Mm,
They call it the public hearing stage.
okay,
Now, for public hearing, you have to pay for advertising it on all tabloids for NGOs and persons that would, quote unquote, like or not like the bill to
yeah,
come in. The logistics involving that alone will take at least 2.5. You know how much it is to advertise on Punch, The Nation, NTA, or Silverbed, and the rest of them. That
yeah,
alone would take so much. Then, of course, it happens everywhere. Lobbying. I'm not calling it bribery. There are some persons you would have to pay for their logistics to come and express their whole sentiments in support of your bill for it to pass through. And of course, some other things I would not want to discuss here. However, to definitely pass a bill, that's the least. And now I am very sure you'll be going to 10 million. And that does not even say it would pass.
yeah,
The legislative process involved in passing a bill is as cumbersome as anything else. That's why on Twitter, for example, when you see headlines like Senate proposes bill to pay salaries to cows, and people start insulting and all of that. It shows, and with due respect, ignorance. Ignorance because
yeah. Sorry, if I will budge in there, but don't you
yeah,
think the Nigerian Senate is responsible to educate Nigerians on all these things? Because, as you said, since the whole senior advocate of Nigeria was not being factual with what he was saying. But don't you think the Senate, they are not doing enough to educate Nigerians on all
at the
this?
risk of defending the Nigerian Senate, I think the Nigerian Senate, to an extent, is doing what they can do to educate Nigerians. But the truth is, you know the country we're from. People are sensitive to controversial news.
Mm,
For example, again, every bill that is passing through public hearing stage will be advertised. Nobody is interested in that. However, the problem I have is most of them are cumbersome. They are too much. They are too voluminous in very complicated languages that an average Nigerian is not just interested in. An average Nigerian that is interested in the workings of the legislature would get as much information as he or she wants to get. So private legislators cannot be stopped from sponsoring bills. The speaker or the senate president, as it were, is just first among equals. You can't stop your fellow. You guys were elected the same way. You can't stop your fellow parliamentarian from presenting bills. So when the legislator presents bills, there are 90 or 80% chance that that bill will not pass second stage. Because how do you want to finance that kind of very sour bill and sponsor you with 10 million naira of your money? Most of these legislators, with due respect, just do it to count, to put to the number of the bills they have they have they have actually
i-
sponsored, you know.
is it solely the responsibility of these senators to fund the bill, or are they getting
Now,
funds from the Senate, or is it their personal resources they use in sponsoring this bill?
initially, to my knowledge, right, you
Yeah,
drive your own bill with your own personal resources. especially private costs as to lobbying. But then at some point when the bill matures, that amount with receipts is returned to you.
Okay.
That's when the bill reaches an advanced stage. It's
Yeah.
gotten back to the Senate on the floor. It's been debated. It's now being sent for executive assent. After it becomes a bill, probably you might get the money back because the process is another sending receipt and all of that. So most people don't just get into it. The happiness of having your bill signed by the C&C, that's the president, just it makes it all worth it. And you just feel like, you know what, I can let that go. They're all for my people.
I think this is better. Yes,
Okay.
thank you. Yeah. So my next question, you went ahead to establish an organization, a policy roundtable. What inspired that? Inspired you to establish the policy roundtable, and how do you envision this organization to contributing to governance reforms and public policy in Nigeria, especially?
So, right from what I was saying, I feel that there's a huge information gap between the governed and the government, especially the legislators or the legislature as a body, as an institution, and the larger body of the Nigerian young people, that's young persons. I feel there are basic things we need to know so we can channel our anger, we can channel our concerns to the right, venue, right? I believe you cannot defend the right you don't know. Because the moment you start speaking erroneously, they won't take you serious. And I met with a couple of friends. I know that what can we do? How can we do it in our own little way? Where whatever happens in the legislature that we know we can share, we can tell or people, young people, like this is how it works. This is not how it works. And this thing started when, if you remember the social media bill earlier on that, when people started and everybody started, oh, it can't pass. But there wasn't any coordinated, there was no coordinated legislative approach to stop it. It was just vituperations online. However, those do not hold water on the floor of the legislature. You have to engage. And how do you engage? Or like we need to let people know, share this knowledge. And that's why we started the policy roundtable. So we had a fora where young people in Abuja and in the North area come around monthly and we bring an expert. Even legislators, we've brought our senior politicians, who brought at some point we had the NBA president, the current NBA president, to come talk about the electoral law. And people get to ask questions freely. It's not a political ground. Ask any question. Come, and I will always tell people to come angry. Like, come, and we've had heated conversations on the floor of the policy roundtable. So we started it in Nigeria, and it blew like wildfire. And the impacts were awesome. At some point we had a journal where we record all of these meetings and questions for people to, and we shared it at some point for free. When we got to 2 years, we started in the UK and here in Canada. We've had a session here in Canada with Nigerians in Canada, and then the UK, Bradford, precisely in the UK. We've had about 2 sessions in the UK, and we hope to continue. This year, we haven't done so much in Nigeria, but we expect to kickstart again in the second quarter.
Okay. Still on your roundtable, policy roundtable, how do you facilitate discussions? How do you generate ideas among young Nigerians to shape government policies? How do you come up with these discussions?
First of all, Nigeria, for example, I always tell people, Nigeria is a country where the news tabloids would not go dry, because there would always be a news. The legislature would always be in trouble. The executive would always say something wrong. So we flow with time. For example, there was a time the elections were coming. There were problems with the electoral law. We've had times where the executive, what did they do again? The cryptocurrency was banned.
Yeah.
So we had cryptocurrency, and young persons deal with crypto.
Yeah.
So that was a very topical point. We had a session on that. We brought cryptocurrency experts. We brought persons from the central bank that affected the policy. We brought ideas. So I remember that particular episode. It was a tough one. Same thing with we've had sessions on Japa, the migration, the massive exodus of
Yeah.
young persons, the brain drain, and all of that. And what we did with that episode, for example, was that persons from Canada that are already residents in Canada and the UK and Australia shared their experience live at the event. So it was around four. It was a very comprehensive meeting, and that's how we gather. And after about 2-3 sessions, we have people now calling their friends. Yeah, there is a place where I think we can learn. We're not using complicated language. We're talking like young people in our
Mm.
own language, and we've had a whole lot of persons come. And also, one of our toughest sessions, even to date, is the NSAS session. We had a session immediately after NSAS.
Okay. Okay.
And we had AVM, the Air Vice Marshal Obirika. We had senior retired personnel in the army, in the navy, young persons, lawyers. We had them. We had people from the religion. My pastor was there, and it was a tough one. And I believe, aside the fact that we're trying to cure ignorance, right? I believe sessions of the policy roundtable are therapeutic. Come and release the anger.
Yeah.
You see people talking and almost crying.
Yeah.
And if there's anything I've learned from our gatherings, is the fact that young people in Nigeria are passionate about their country, and that's the only thing that justifies the vituperations you see on Twitter, for example.
Okay. You made mention of NSAS, and earlier on you also made mention that most times we as young people we do not have this coordinated approach and to changing things. Do you think that's one of the shortcoming for the NSAS? That's why today we can't say there was a significant change in the way police man our roads or police engage in their activities. That we went out to protest as young people over Nigeria, but then we can't say there's a significant change in what was before and what is today.
For me, right? I will never believe, or I don't belong to the school of thought that says that it's because we didn't form a critical mass, because we do not have a structure that the NSAS failed. No government, no responsible government in the world to turn the barrel of the gun against its citizens, not talk of its young persons. It's indefensible. Structureful or structureless. Let me use the word loosely. You don't shoot people. You don't go ahead and just spray bullets on young future leaders. So whether we have structure or not, I think I would lay the blame at the doorstep of the government, of the then government. Or I think it's even the now government, because it's the same party. How the Constitution already provides that the security and the welfare of the people shall be the primary purpose of government. That illegality has no excuse. And that's my response to that question. It has no excuse. No government should shoot a critical mass of its people. Until now, there's still no justice for those persons, for those patriots that sacrificed their lives to make sure the struggle. And of course, there will be 1,000,000,001 NSAS that is coming. They know that.
Okay. Still on your organization, as recommendations and discussions from your organization, have they been considered by government at any level?
Yes, a couple of them.
Okay.
But I personally do not like pushing it out like that. Every recommendations from the policy roundtable, we make sure that it gets to the at least to the office of the clerk of the Senate committee of the matter we're discussing. Like cryptocurrency, we make sure we copy the Senate Committee on Finance, on Appropriation, on Ethics. And thank God then my boss was a member of a couple of those committees. So I copied him directly. I had talks with him in person, and I submitted those. At least one of uh 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 our recommendations got to the floor of the house as in form of a motion, which was read by my boss. It was graceful. He decided to read it. I imputed it in there, and he read it. And I think that's a win. And if we can slowly continue to do that, we'll form a major army of informed young persons. The good thing with that is, if you are in the UK and you understand the power of intellect or the power of knowing one's right.
Yeah.
There is no army that can defeat a citizenry who is well informed. An average young person in this first world will walk up to the IMP and tell him, I pay your bills, my tax pay your bills. You can't say that to me. An average Nigerian believes that anything a legislator or a politician does for you, he does it for you at his own mercy.
Yeah.
For you paying with your representative, he should serve you. They are servants. As basic as that sounds, they are your servants, you know. But until we reorientate, we change that morale, I don't think we would really go anywhere.
Okay. Let's go back to Uniben.
Oh yes,
Center of this whole conversation.
absolutely.
Why did you choose the University of Benin to study, and why also did you choose law? Well, out of all, we have several federal institutions or reputable institutions.
Why did I choose the best faculty in the school?
That is quite
Social science student will
controversial.
not agree.
That is quite controversial, but we'll come to that. So choose Uniben before you choose law.
Okay. Yeah, I never wanted to become a lawyer. I never wanted to come to Uniben. But my dad is a cocoa farmer. He's a businessman. He has stores in Benin. And you know, the proximity of Benin to Ondo State and cocoa, the exodus, the transportation of cocoa. So he had a warehouse in Gobazwa. I don't know if you are familiar with Gobazwa and Ubogui.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes most of his workers have bank accounts in Benin and banks in Uniben. So oftentimes he comes to Uniben and be like, I like this school. So he picked it. He was like, you should go to Uniben. I'm like, okay. So I actually got into Uniben in 2008 for my diploma in law.
Okay.
I did my diploma in law for 2 years, then I went to English. Then I went back to the best faculty in the school. So and my dad likes law so much. My younger brother also graduated in the faculty of law. He was president of LAWSA. It was the last, I think, 2 years ago. He was the president of LAWSA. So he's a lawyer too. I'm a lawyer too. So he likes law. And that's why I wanted to be a mass communicator.
Okay, so
but that's one. I would have been in a Kewa.
So is there
I
any,
don't want to make
do you have any regrets not studying mass communication?
Absolutely not. Law defined my life. I do not think I would be here if not for law. I think everybody in the world should be a lawyer. That's the noblest of all professions in the world. And I think, Aka, you should probably see to that.
Okay, maybe I will have a rethink and in that direction. Still on Uniben, what do you say is the greatest attributes you took from the institution? You were into student politics. You were quite vibrant. You are at the forefront of promoting the cause of your faculty, especially when it comes to student union elections and all that. You made friends from the institution, which I believe are still part of your network today. So what attribute can you say you took from the institution?
Resilience. Absolute resilience. There's a thing Uniben does to you, and you don't even know it. It gives you a coordinated, unconscious response to life's challenges. The tough insecurity, quote and unquote, we had off campus with some members of the underworld, and even in school, you become so tough that no matter what you encounter outside of Uniben, you have a coordinated response to it already. You don't leave Uniben and you get to NYC camp, for example, and the guy is charging at you and you're scared. You've been there, done that. You already know. Like, I beg. An average university watching this will understand this. That you've been there, done that. You've been beaten. You've been robbed. And I'm not saying those things are good, yeah. The school has tested you academically. You have one of the, I repeat again, that some of the best teachers in tertiary institutions today are in Uniben, especially in the law faculty. I can boast of being taught by the best persons. The current VC taught me contract law. Professor Ariche, Professor Ata, major persons, Professor Aibukago, and major persons in the legal profession today are still in Uniben. Professor Asebo, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. I was taught by this person. And I think that's huge for a person to be taught by this colossus. They build you academically, and you have a response to life's problem. There is nothing politically that I've done after Uniben that Uniben didn't prepare me for. For example, again, I believe I always tell people, please get involved in student politics or something at all, because it's not different from what you see outside. The night meetings that we will do, the betrayals we get from some big faculties, social science, let me not mention their names. The it's the same. It's just
Yeah.
the same way, So it builds you. There's the coordinated response you have to life's challenges. And do you want to speak about spirituality? At that time, I was in Uniben. We had about how many student fellowships on campus? A whole lot of them. So when people say they are young churches now, young pastors, we had that in Uniben years ago. So Uniben prepares you for the life in front. It's too futuristic. It's a very futuristic institution, and that prepared me a whole lot.
Okay. Lastly, the most memorable time you had in the institution. What can you say? Oh, this event or this particular stage is quite memorable for me. If that's for you, what is that?
I think I have two, if you allow me
Okay.
say that.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the first one was when I was in 300 level. I was clerk of the Losa Parliament. And the speaker then is a PhD holder now in the UK. He teaches. I've forgotten the university. He will watch this thing, and I'll get in trouble for this because I'll send it to him. We figured that every resolution of the parliament, the president will not affect it because he's friends with his friends. The speaker is friends with the president, so he was sending us out. I did something drastic. I met with a few persons that do not like him in his class now in the parliament. I formed a critical mass. I was in 300 level first semester, and one day he wasn't around. We did the sitting, and he was impeached. I ran underground because it was unheard of. He was impeached. I became acting speaker in 300, and it doesn't happen. It was when the heat was too tough that I now yielded to one of the chief whip who was in 500 level, now became acting speaker. But then I became acting speaker right in 300 level, from a clerk to acting speaker. It was a tough moment, and it shaped me a whole lot. It made me understand, as simple as that was, made me understand but made me understand parliamentary processes. Funny enough, it's the same thing in the Senate, in the legislature. It's just the same.
Yeah.
The planning, the covert operations and all of that. That's one. And I want to say a big shout out to my friends who formed the wall of protection around me then. Stanley, Nabo, and the rest. Abiendi, Yakim, then. They were my seniors, but they protected me. So it was a week where we had a student union election then. Law, as far as we remember, I never produced general secretary. And um, that week we had the attorney general, the general secretary, and the clerk of the parliament. It was unprecedented. Three principal officers in the student union government. I was electoral commissioner, and making that work in my time was memorable, hugely memorable. Lobbying Professor Sagede, who was the dean of students, really fighting for my friends, Emmanuel, Osayuki, and Alex. It was a big deal. And winning that election really brought a whole lot. And of course, maybe I'll add when our final results came out. After all of these things, we still made it 2-1, which is a good one.
Yeah. That was the icing on the cake for you.
Yeah,
Boss.
that was a nice thing to kill for me. Yeah.
Thank you so much for
Anytime,
being
my brother.
part of
Anytime.
this show. I really
Anytime.
appreciate it. Thank you. I've been speaking with Olubunmi Ayantunji. He's a legal practitioner and a policy expert. He holds a Bachelor of Law degree from the Faculty of Law, University of Benin. Continue to subscribe to our channel, bringing more exclusive interviews with Uniben alumni. Bye for now.
1970, we sure we did the forefront. Knowledge for service, for sure we did the work. Auditorium to basement of all faculty of law.